Eric, what does this remind you of, this here?
Is that a 1996 Mac Mini, perhaps, or some Mac product that I missed?
It does have that sort of feel to it, right? The very large radii, sharp edges.
I love an aluminum CNC part.
Made out of a solid piece of aluminum.
Yes. Reminds me of
Lots of chips.
our good friends at Apple so much. And another topic that industrial designers love to talk about. Let's talk about Apple a little bit.
Yeah.
In fact, I got an idea for you. I'm going to flip a $2 Canadian coin, and one or the other of us is going to take the we love Apple approach, and the other one is going to play counterpoint. How's that sound? You ready?
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's probably
all right. Tails. So I got to be. I'll be the good guy, even though I'm wearing black today.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah.
Think about why we
kind of like the contrast.
I mean, undeniably, Apple put industrial design on the map. They made the world appreciate the value of good design. We appreciated the products that they came out with. They were dedicated to making great user experiences along the way, and provided some pretty fantastic products that most of us still use and feel pretty good about every day. So I think we owe them a debt of gratitude for that.
Yeah, you'd be hard pressed to find a designer that doesn't acknowledge or appreciate the fact that, it was a really great proponent of bringing industrial design to the forefront. So that a lot nowadays I'm finding myself a lot less telling people that I, in fact, as an industrial designer, and not somebody who designs factories and HVAC systems. Right. We often get confused with industrial engineers.
Right.
And so are in fact that group of folks which is really involved in product design. And so I get that, but I think my frustration is that it's somehow become ubiquitous with that's just the baseline for everything that's going to be designed moving forward, from consumer products to transportation to medical devices.
Make my medical device look like an iPhone.
How many times have I heard that one? And more times than I can count. In fact, if I had $1 for every time I heard that, I probably wouldn't even need to do this podcast today. And so that, to me, it's a good segue into really having this discussion about, clients who are excited about their product having that same sort of presence that an Apple product has. Whether it's a iPhone, an iPad, an whatever, even those little tracking devices, they seem to have sort of really they've always been a pretty big trendsetter for all these different products. But it's pretty challenging when a client tells you, just make it like the Apple iPhone. I want my thing to look like that, right? Not really understanding what that actually means.
Right.
They might as well be telling me, I want it to look like a Ford F-150 or a Tesla. Okay, so I have a device which is going to be used in surgery, and it's a handheld device, not really electronic, and that's the look and feel that you want to have, right? It's a difficult thing to translate, not the least of which is the fact that, like this very complex piece of aluminum here, there's a lot of machine operands that went into this. So if our client wanted one of these to be the shell of his product, or her product, and they're like, yeah, what's your volumes? 100, maybe, for the first 5 years, great. That is probably going to be like a $2,000 to $5,000 part, even in those volumes, right? As opposed to Apple, who along with their, favorite CM, Foxconn, have probably tens of thousands of CNC machines out there at their name, and so they can really drive down the cost of these things. So there's less onus on those designers to really be more precious with manufacturing procedures and being more influenced by them, where in fact they actually the coin is flipped for them. So
right.
And yeah, one could say, oh well, you're just jealous because you don't get to design something where we make millions of them and we can just CNC machine it and to transform it into any shape. But that's probably a large frustration, I think, for a lot of folks who are in this space.
As they say, it takes a lot of work to make something this simple. They certainly have leveraged their capabilities, their market power, and a lot of really smart and really dedicated people to make products that are almost impossibly simple and work in ways that seem so intuitively obvious, but we know from working through this how difficult it is to make something always work and work the way you would expect it to and provide surprise and delight within there. And
that's
one of the things that we talk about too is that in order to be able to do that, they have the benefit and have been dedicated to sort of controlling their own ecosystem, right? They design their own products, design their own software, they have their own retail experiences, the packaging, the web experience, everything is under control and sort of serving one particular goal. That's interesting. I wonder what you think and how the tide has turned a little bit with this whole idea of being a part of a controlled ecosystem like that for all the benefits that it provides.
Yeah, it's fascinating. This end-to-end experience, I think, was really something that probably started with Steve Jobs right from the outset, who disliked a lot of this hodgepodgeness of computers and electronics and things that seemed to be that nobody really had any sort of consistency. I don't think that they necessarily invented having, say, a specific brand language or something like a form that sort of can be enveloped in a whole bunch of other things. In fact, Johnny Ives has been very open about the fact that, Dieter Rams, who's one of his biggest influences, if you go back to a lot of the 1960s Braun products, you do see a little bit of Apple DNA there, right? Or rather, you see Braun DNA
right.
in the Apple products. So I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. But converting, a brand DNA for our clients from something like that, from like saying a statement like that, can be a really challenging and expensive undertaking. And so it's always, the onus is always on the designers to somehow convert that into something that's really useful for them. And that can be quite difficult in the medical space industry, where we'll be limited by volume, which means we'll be limited by manufacturing technique. We'll be limited by the fact that these things are going to have to be around for 5 to 10 years. So sourcing components and things like that really has this feedback effect into our design, as opposed to the other way around, which is things where Apple, their design actually has that feedback effect on the sort of the supply chain. Like standardized screen sizes, for instance.
Right.
Ran into that problem before, right? We were trying to design this device that had a glass screen. Like, we even tried to get in contact with Gorilla Glass. They wouldn't even answer. Like, they didn't even answer the phone. They were just like, "You guys are nobodies. I'm not talking to you."
Right.
And
basically
so,
captive.
Yeah, exactly. So you just have to use whatever's out there. And so you are sort of at the mercy of those things that are already in place.
Seems too that some of the benefits that Apple has gotten from controlling their ecosystem are challenged now by ideas and expectations of interoperability. There's such a demand now from at least our customers and our users that devices play nice with each other and ecosystems play nice with each other. And I know that's a challenge, but it seems like it is something that's a demand, and that some of the consortiums that have gotten together to create common protocols like Bluetooth have seen some big successes and have made the benefits to users. Could they maybe arguably outweigh the benefits of keeping tight control over everything? Perhaps.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. You remind me of the whole the Apple, the magnetic connector, and which you can love or hate it for whatever reasons, and how. Just a few years ago, you probably heard about this. So European Union is really, for instance, is bringing in standardizing USB-C for all products, including Apple stuff. And so they have to start integrating that into it. And in the medical device industry, standardization is still a little bit out of reach, it seems sometimes.
Right.
Quite often we'll have our clients tell us about, it would be great if my thing could connect to the EHR or the EMR system, in a hospital. Like, oh my God, that's not an insurmountable challenge there. So, and
secondly, which one?
Yeah, well, this is the thing, right? And in fact, I remembered a couple of years ago doing some research down in the States in a hospital, and they were telling us about how they had just recently gotten the wireless printers to print on their Wi-Fi network. And so, because we were talking about this device in nuclear medicine and how it could work and connect to their system, and they said, yeah, well,
slow down a little.
And this was like one of the well-funded premier hospitals of the U.S. Like, money was no object. It really sort of made me realize,
running on some
it's
1999
2024, but we are still not there yet with that kind of consistent ecosystem, right? If you may.
Right.
So, yeah, it's lots of hurdles to overcome there for sure.
Well, hopefully we'll take the good and manage the blow back the bad at the same time.